Greetings, welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore Jupiter's station in direct, which occurs in terms of universal time on February the 4th. Jupiter goes through an annual 4-month retrograde, so 17 weeks or around about 32% of the year, and this one began on the 9th of October when Jupiter was at 21 degrees and 34 minutes, so just nibbling into the third decan, which is subruled by Saturn and Uranus. So as this process comes to a close, Jupiter is stationed at 11 degrees and 16 minutes in the sign of Gemini, so just in the second decan, subruled by Venus. I'm going to share with you some Jupiter themes. It rules 2 signs. Most people know about its Sagittarius rulership, less so its rulership of Pisces, where it's actually the traditional ruler. But what does Jupiter in Gemini mean? We also need to be mindful of the clash with Saturn, which first reached its peak in terms of an exact 90-degree angle on the 19th of August. That was repeated on the 24th of December and within 3 degrees through the first 2 weeks of January. But on the event chart, as Jupiter goes direct, they're still within 6 degrees of that exact square, so that's still notable, so we need to be mindful of that. But what are the opportunities as Jupiter goes direct? It forges a gorgeous alliance to the ruler of the sign of Gemini, Mercury. So there's some mutual receptivity, but because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of the sign of Pisces, where Saturn is, that mutual receptivity there is much more challenging. We have the greater benefit being challenged by the greater malefic. That doesn't have a great feel. I'm going to share with you also the event chart. First of all, from a solar perspective, so we can just get a feel collectively of how this will be, but then from a natal perspective. That has an ascendant in the sign of Aries at 22 degrees. We also have a great link within that between Venus and Pluto, but a clash between the moon and Pluto, so we need to understand that. Now, Jupiter won't come out of its shadow period for some time. I'm going to share exactly what that date is. We've got some way to go before the potential for fortune can really start to flood through, because of course Jupiter in the sign of Gemini is detrimented. But then Jupiter is going to be moving into the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted on the 9th of June. But guess what? As it does, it clashes with Saturn again. And in fact, they come back into an exact square on the 15th of June. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we can expect right through to then. And then I'm going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. People do ask what they should watch. If you know your natal chart well, but particularly your house overlays, definitely the ascendant. But the sun is the core of us, so it's always worthwhile checking out what the sun's saying. If you're more interested in an emotional perspective, that's where you can track where the moon is. But certainly in terms of the energy that Jupiter's going to be creating as it goes direct, the 19 degrees that it's going to travel from the start of this process through to the 9th of June could be quite exciting. Please stay with me as I go through all of this. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for joining me again. If you have any thoughts, please feel welcome to share them. This is very much a community. If you'd like to talk to me direct, I am a consulting astrologer. Please see my testimonials below. You can check out how other people have found working with me. If you'd like to have a video consultation with me, one way, that's cheaper, and that's a new perspective that I'm offering. You can have your year ahead, you can have 2 questions answered, or your solar return analysed. Please see the link below for more. Now, if you want a personal horoscope forecast and also an understanding of your natal chart, through to the end of February, you can get one half price. Please see the link below for that very special offer. Thank you too if you've contributed to the channel. We really appreciate that. And also with the buy the coffee function, that's proved to be popular too. Please see that below for more. So let's just think about Jupiter themes. Jupiter, as I mentioned, most people know it's very much to do with Sagittarius, which is to do with being forthright, optimistic, independent, a love of travel, knowledge, freedom, have an appreciation of philosophy, and in some ways it can be to do with the rule of law. But Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius has in some ways given us a sense that when Jupiter is in a particular zodiac sign, then everything must work out perfectly in terms of where it is as far as our natal chart is concerned. And that is a little bit simplistic, not least in terms of the essential dignities that Jupiter in the sign of Gemini is, as I mentioned, in its detriment. So we can't be overconfident, and one of the best ways to work with that Sagittarius Jupiter energy is to make sure that we follow up our claims and pledges, and sometimes our boasts, with actual action. So it's important to get stuck in, roll our sleeves up, and apply the Jupiter positivity in a bit more of a Saturnian way. It is about application. Now, its rulership of Pisces is much more ephemeral. It's much more to do with the spiritual dimension, and of course Neptune is the co-ruler. And as this event occurs, we do have a magical alliance between Neptune and the North Node, which is incredibly rare. Why? Because Neptune takes 164 years to go through its whole cycle. 12 years ago that influence last permeated itself. So a very spiritual dimension, because the North Node is where we're being pulled towards. Of course, we're going to have the eclipse series focusing on the sign of Pisces and its polar opposite Virgo, and that mirrors the nodal shift. So that's very important to be mindful of this. But Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, let's think about that. Certainly gives subjects who have it natally a very inquisitive mind. And that fact gathering for information, which is part of Jupiter's influence of Sagittarius, can be to do with snippets, so fast moving information. But certainly people with Jupiter in Gemini natally could have an appreciation of things like philosophy and religion, or they could be marvellous journalists or writers or marketeers. Jupiter can be to do with trade, particularly international trade. But let's just think about the square with Saturn, which peaked first of all on the 19th of August. It's one of the big structural synodic aspects, and that cycle can really create some problems, because if we think Jupiter is about growth and Saturn can be about limitation, in a square they can be particularly aggravating. So if we think about the square being repeated on Christmas Eve as it was, and through the first 2 weeks of January within 3 degrees, as this event occurs, it is, as I mentioned before, about 6 degrees. So it's still something to be very mindful of. How will this play out? How will it manifest itself? Well, Saturn's come into the end of its cycle, which is 29.5 years in Pisces. It's got about another year to go. Of course, it's moving into Aries for 3 months and 7 days from the 26th of May this year. But once it moves early in 2026 into Aries, that's the beginning of the new cycle. So that gives us some understanding that Jupiter, being in the very bubbly sign of Gemini, is being checked by the more meditative, scrutinizing, shrewd energies of Saturn at the end of its zodiacal journey. So in some ways we're getting consequences for all the things that we've done over the last 29.5 years. But however much we talk about our ideas, or particularly about information, Saturn suggests in some ways that information may be manifested in not necessarily a straightforward or even honest way. So this is a theme that's been going on for some while, the post-truth era. And unfortunately, we're reading more and more stories where systems, technology and databases are now being accessed by unauthorized individuals, or we have microblogging platforms, social media, where particular philosophies are being permeated which are not fact-checked. So, in a way, Saturn can be our protector. It's scrutinizing some of the claims that Jupiter in Gemini can make. But in terms of the retrograde, it obviously depends on your natal chart, but if you have got anything from around about 23 degrees to 9 degrees in a mutable sign, so that would be Gemini itself, it would be Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, you may have really felt a slowdown in what you wanted to achieve with Jupiter's retrograde, and that may have created quite a lot of frustration. So what I'm going to share with you in terms of the zodiac signs when I go through them is what you can expect through to when Jupiter gets on that cusp of moving into Cancer. Now, I mentioned before that Jupiter won't come out of its post-retrograde shadow straight away. It won't be, in fact, through till the 1st of May. So we won't necessarily see an instant transformation. So on the screen now, I'm showing the solar event chart. This gives us all a collective overview of what's going on. So Jupiter is, as we'd expect, in the 3rd house, matching that Gemini energy, but it's forging an almost perfect link with Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini. So they've got mutual receptivity, but Mercury is also just into the 2nd decan of Aquarius, which it sub-rules. It's pretty close to the Sun, which is giving us a push to think about the ways that we can communicate more effectively. Aquarius is an air sign, but particularly in terms of how we link to others, our network, our social interaction, but perhaps also where we can collaborate and cooperate too. So there can be a speeding up now for sure. So Jupiter linking to Mercury is an excellent link, particularly if we do want to ignite our world with a little bit more fun and sociability, because January can often, particularly in the northern hemisphere, be quite a sleepy month. But Venus has just moved, you can see, into the sign of Aries. It is detrimented, but it forges a fantastic link with Pluto. Now personally, I really like people who have Venus natally in Aries. They see something that they desire and they go for it in a very direct way. So the fire energy of Aries flames up Venus, but the link to Pluto can act as transformative energy. So something could move forwards, particularly if we take the initiative. So if there is somebody that you're attracted to, or you'd like to be friendly with, or you'd like to work closely with on a shared interest or topic, then that influence is really lovely too. But Jupiter and Mercury are the 2 planets of trade. If we think about Jupiter, it does influence international affairs and borders through its rulership of the sign of Sagittarius. And because the 3rd house can be contracts, and the sign of Aquarius can be, in terms of Mercury's rulership there, the way in which that we might think fresh, we might be a little bit more innovative in our approach. So that's super conducive to something speeding up, whether it is around our personal interactions and our friendships and our social world, or it is around our business affairs. Mercury, merchant, linking back to Jupiter, which is about growth, optimism and hope. It is the greater benefit, so that's lovely. But as I mentioned on my introduction, Saturn, the greater malefic, is tucked away still in house 12. So we have to be aware of what's going on out of sight. And that's really important. So whatever we're reading or hearing, or whatever claims people are making, it's vital that we as individuals scrutinize that energy very carefully indeed. It is true that Neptune and the North Node are in a conjunction for the first time in 12 years, which is lovely. It's a very spiritual conjunction. That does offset some of the more limiting energy of Saturn, but you can see Saturn's just under 18, Jupiter's at 11. It's about a 6 degree and a bit gap in that square, so it's still there. So whatever we read, whatever's claimed, we need to be a little bit skeptical, but we also need to understand how our subconscious is steering some of our own thoughts and our own philosophies and perhaps our own belief systems, which the third house of Gemini also influences. We can also see just briefly that the moon in the sign of Taurus, where she loves to be, she's exalted, clashes with Pluto. So as much as we may have a real sense of idealism with Jupiter going direct, we have to be aware that essentially whatever is going on in our situation, we need to take it back to how does it feel in terms of its value? Does it give us a sense of security? Is there something in it that gives us some kind of platform that is realistic? So we could also experience somebody with the moon squaring up with Pluto who tends to be very intense and could try to browbeat us in some way in terms of their particular view. Now let's look at this event in terms of the natal chart. So the ascendant's at 22 degrees in the sign of Aries. That puts the moon in the first house, and the first house energy of the moon is very fresh, but that's clashing with Pluto still, but in Placidus, proportional house system, Pluto is in house 11. So it is still asking us to be very idealistic, but the moon, I feel, in Taurus is very much about realism. But the interesting thing is that Jupiter is in house 2 in this chart, so very much about money. So as much as we may have some expectation that Jupiter going direct can unblock some delays and frustrations or any perceived bad fortune that we've had, we need to be realistic. Saturn's still there, operating deep in the long celestial grass in house 12, and it can influence Jupiter, whether it's the conversation, the solar chart, house 3, or the natal chart in terms of money. And that's my take on those two charts. But I mentioned before that Jupiter won't actually emerge from its post-retrograde shadow until the 1st of May. But what's incredible is that as this event occurs, Venus is at 0 degrees in Aries. When Jupiter emerges from the post-retrograde shadow at the start of May, Venus is at 0 degrees Aries. And it's because, of course, Venus is going to go through a 6-week retrograde. And that is going to be very powerful indeed. However, Venus on the 1st of May will be in a conjunction with Neptune. That's interesting, isn't it? Because Neptune will be moving into Aries for its first blush of just under 8 months through to the 10th of December. And that 164-year cycle, it's coming to an end. It will end formally at the start of 2026. So just to recap, if you have been feeling that things have been going slow in your life, that you haven't felt very optimistic, that would be completely understandable with some of the things that seem to be going on in the world, which could affect even the most upbeat person at times. But Jupiter can be about being jovial and bubbly, and it can be about an appreciation of opportunities. It can be about being very upbeat, and certainly in the sign of Gemini, it can be about technology, quick communications, it can be about media, and of course all of those areas are constantly shifting because of the rate of change is going so quick. But I think the important thing from now through to June the 9th is to make sure that when we're considering a particular conversation or some writing or some information, we do scrutinize it very carefully. Saturn is about wisdom, it's about shrewdness. Yes, it's got a really bad reputation, but it can be massively helpful to us. And if someone, for example, tells you about a get-rich-quick scheme and is absolutely full of enthusiasm for it, there's nothing wrong with going away, checking out the claim and really scrutinising it in a much more cool and detached way. That's a very smart thing to do. So we mustn't always see Jupiter and Saturn as polar opposites, of Jupiter being amazing and Saturn being absolutely dreadful. Actually, in natal astrology, particularly when I'm working with clients, if Saturn heads over a cusp in a natal chart or a progressed chart, do you know that often can bring a reward if the person has really applied themselves. Now, for sure, it could, for example, bring a challenge. Absolutely. That's part of the process of dealing with Saturn that we all have to face. But please don't see it in binary terms between Jupiter and Saturn. But on this particular transit through the sign of Gemini, there is no doubt that Saturn has been quite a challenge to Jupiter. And Jupiter in Gemini is not naturally at its best. And Saturn is just reminding us all of the time to try to understand the subtext of what's really meant, or what's the emotional dimension of the claim that's being made. So that's the best way I can really express it to you. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs. If you've yet to watch your deep dive video for each of the 12 signs for February, please see the link below. Also, I'd like to tell you we've launched a new website. It is a work in process because it's a very big website, and the old website had been in operation for a very long time. So it's going to take a little bit of time to really refine things. But if you'd like to visit it, please join me at www.patrickarundell.com. It would be absolutely lovely to have your company. So please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. So Aries, when Jupiter first moved into Gemini, you may have had a real sense of optimism. Quite rightly, life may have initially speeded up a lot. There may have been quite a lot of bubbly social interaction. You may have thought or even got a new vehicle. You may have got some new tech. You may have worked hard on a blog or a book that you've long wanted to grapple with, or perhaps some other form of publishing. But once Saturn did go into that exact right angle on the 19th of August, ever since then, I do feel it has probably felt like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And the irony is, because you have been going through an eclipse series in your sign, along with your polar opposite of Libra, and you've got one more to go towards the end of March, that's been supercharging some kind of new start. But at the same time, something from your past needed to be wound up, or perhaps you've had to come to terms with some past hurts or separations, and that has been a difficult thing to balance. So the third house energy, how we think, how we interact, could have seen you, particularly from the latter part of August, becoming a little bit less inclined to join in with your local community. Perhaps you haven't felt quite so socially interactive. Now, I feel that there can be an improvement from the 1st of May, particularly because of Venus being back in your sign at that time and being conjunct Neptune. But you are going to have another solar eclipse at the end of March, which gives you one final opportunity in that eclipse series to go for something that's very important to you, that you have a lot of conviction about. The third house is about how we share the message. If you share the message with a strong understanding of how you feel and what the message is truly about in a spiritual or psychological way, you can make true progress between now and when Jupiter moves into Cancer. But if you're still working through some of those past difficulties or hurts, you may need to be very conscious of not trying to push those to one side. One of the things with Jupiter in the 3rd house is we could have responses like, oh, I'm absolutely fine. which is something quite a lot of people do when they're not actually fine. They're not really processing whatever hurts and upsets that have occurred. So if you're working that old stuff through, you're freeing up the space in your personal hard drive to actually have more sparkling chats and fun with others. It could be with neighbours, it could be with shared interests in your community, it could be with siblings if you get on well with them. So Aries, please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Taurus, for you, ironically, Jupiter's been in your second house. There's no sign that understands the second house better than a Taurus. You have an appreciation of the good things in life. One of the things that Jupiter can do in the second house is give us an even greater appreciation of anything that is remotely gooey and yummy. So when the process started, you may have found that joining in, having a good time, and whether it's good food or good drink, perhaps in the northern hemisphere it was some barbecues, perhaps if you're down south, something a little bit more wintry, but you probably enjoyed those things to a great degree. But the second house is also about where we can have luck, which is Jupiter is about, around money. But I feel that the area that may have disappointed you may have been anything to do with joint ventures or collaborations. That's where Saturn is. Saturn's also in the part of your chart to do with your highest hopes. So if some of your expectations have been a bit too elevated for the reality, there may have been disappointments there too. Perhaps with the eclipse series that was going on, and we've got one more to go at the end of March in Aries, and the North Node being in your 12th house, that also was clouding your clarity in terms of what you needed to do if you wanted to improve your financial circumstances. But Jupiter is known as being the planet of chance, if you like, and certainly initially before the clash with Saturn and then the retrograde, I feel that you could have had some strokes of luck, and serendipity may have called for you, which is lovely. But as we end this retrograde period, if it has felt much less like that, opportunities have felt much more limited, you may have also become much more conscious of who you couldn't quite relate to because their value systems don't align with yours, as much as them being a bit mean or tight with money. If you go out for a night, you know, that person who always seems to find themselves at the back of a group of people not buying around, that type of thing you may have noticed and found particularly galling. Or someone who's always taken your generosity for granted. Those kind of things may have really stuck in your craw since the 9th of October. So you can improve your financial situation from now through till the 9th of June, but I feel it will be much more obvious to you from the 21st or the 21st degree, which will be the 1st of May, because that is when the post-retrograde shadow unwinds. But we must be mindful that through to the 24th of April, Jupiter will be in the second decan, which is sub-ruled by your ruler Venus, which can be very helpful financially. Good luck from the period from now through till the 9th of June. Jupiter is a lot to do with how we think, but it's not just about taking actions, it's also about applying ourselves. And if you want to improve your financial situation, it is important to test any ideas you have in terms of their potential longevity. And a great way to do that could be by asking the most skeptical or worldly friend you have what they think about your idea. You might not necessarily like their reply, but you'll probably get some perspectives that could be extremely valuable in themselves. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Gemini, Every 12 years or so, as Jupiter visits our sign, we get the impression that it can be a feel-good influence. And it can be, particularly when it aligns with our sun or our ascendant. The ascendant's great for our health. It's not too shabby with the sun as well. Of course, it depends on what house it's in. You could have your sun in the 2nd or 8th house, and that could definitely bring some extra lucre in. But I feel that Jupiter has been asking you to actualize your individuality at a time when Uranus has been stirring up things psychologically, and that's not been an easy thing to deal with. And also Saturn's been in the part of your chart to do with worldly obligations and responsibilities, and at times your flair, creativity and artistry may seem to have been pulverized by the more corporate demands of your work or line manager or boss or organization. Or if you work for yourself, the brilliant ideas that you've been manifesting are met by a wall of conservatism because you're ahead of the time in terms of trends. And that may have been quite frustrating for you since the end of August, to be honest, and it hasn't really shifted from then. And you can see on this event, with Saturn only being about 6 degrees away, being very individualistic against the 10th house energies of Saturn, which of course it rules, suggests that if you're trying to do something that is modern, that is fresh, that might not have necessarily seen you make quite the progress that you would like. Things can speed up for you now, for sure, through to the 24th of April. Jupiter is going to stay in your 2nd decan, sub-ruled by Venus. That can bring fortune financially. But it also can see you want to, in some ways, refresh your personal image. Why not? That can give you extra confidence and add to your natural charisma. But as it moves towards the sign of Cancer, if you are working on something that's important to you, that is a bit different, because that 3rd decan is sub-ruled by Saturn and Uranus, that's when you can blend innovation with application and overcome the more restrictive energies of Saturn in Pisces once and for all. So a breakthrough is possible before June the 9th, but particularly from the 1st of May, when we have the emergence from the post-retrograde shadow and the conjunction between Venus and Neptune in Aries on the same day, which will forge a tremendous energy for you to visualize anything to do with imagination and artistry from that point. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Cancer, through to the 9th of June, when Jupiter arrives back in your sign with its message of hope, which will be conditioned, to be honest, by Saturn and Neptune in your sector of responsibility and ambition. But from now until then, a much more spiritual dimension is going to play out for you, I feel. You could meet someone through to the 24th of April by going on a retreat, working with a healer. Perhaps you're going to be the person advising people in a way which gives them a huge amount of support and information. Your spiritual dimension can be supercharged, not just by Jupiter being in your solar 12th house, but also because as this event begins of Neptune's tight embrace with the North Node, that can potentially be very magical in the 9th house. It can also be very deceptive. As we know, Neptune can be very dreamy and therefore quite mystical, but maybe that's the part of life that's really calling out to you. So if you find yourself wanting to book a holiday or go somewhere which is much more tranquil and peaceful and gives you time to recharge your batteries, it really would fit this window of opportunity that you're entering during this time. But one of the things I will say to you is that pretty well from the middle of August last year through to now, it's possible that at times information has been quite draining to you. And that's because of Saturn being in the 9th house. If you've turned off the news, it's just too grim to digest. It wouldn't in any way surprise me. it may have also been the case that over a point of principle or fairness, someone may have profoundly disappointed you, and you're still trying to understand what the ramifications of that are. Maybe it's been around a contract. Maybe someone hasn't been quite as faithful or sincere as you would like. Maybe a friend. So those kind of themes have been quite manifest for you. But the great thing about having Jupiter in the 12th house, it really evokes that more Piscean vibe. And really, since Neptune moved into the sign of Pisces in 2012 for the longer term, I feel that you have grown your perspective in a huge way. And there can be a top-up that you go through during this period, this next phase of Jupiter's transition through the sign of Gemini. So embrace it, and just if you feel the need that you need to be a bit quieter, have some seclusion or space, take some breaths, enjoy some lovely treatments, go on a spa day, then that's just perfect for you to do. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Leo, Jupiter moved into your sector of friendship, sociability, long-term plans, higher hopes, even good luck, the 11th house, when it went into Gemini towards the end of last May. But once it started to come into contact with Saturn mid-August, that really has created a bit of a complex situation, I feel, because the things that Jupiter's been asking you to orientate towards aren't necessarily tangible things, yet Saturn, unfortunately, is very much about tangibilities, and in the sign of Pisces for you, it can be about shared finance, can be about business, it can be about things like mortgages, pensions, those hard things that are very, very different from that more idealistic energy of Jupiter in Gemini. And of course, Gemini itself can be very much to do with our connection with people immediately around us. So you may have gone through a period through to the middle of August where things were very sparkly in terms of your interactions. But since then, especially around a close alliance, whether it's in a business partnership, a personal relationship, or if your circumstances have been affected by the financial crunch, it's much more difficult to feel quite so happy with the status quo. You do get an opportunity now through to the 9th of June to get back on the front foot. I don't necessarily think it's going to speed up straight away, but I feel from the start of May, when the post-retrograde period ends, that does give you a chance to really go for some of those things that you initially hoped to achieve when Jupiter first moved into Gemini. But if you have encountered certain people whose values are just completely different to your own, that may have become starkly obvious and quite hard to digest if it is someone you've known for a long time. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Virgo, ever since Jupiter moved to the top of your chart towards the end of May in the sign of Gemini, which like you is ruled by Mercury, you may have been setting your stall out in terms of your worldly interactions in a different way, and there may have been some immediate dynamic progress right through to the middle of August. But once there were a series of planets located in Leo, and you had the square on the 19th of August with Saturn in your 7th house. If there are professional relationships which haven't been quite as you would like, it may have been quite burdensome for you. For example, if you've got a boss who's very micromanaging, that can really burst our bubble if we're wanting to be more enterprising, because Jupiter is about being enterprising. The 10th house is about success and goals. If you haven't been inhibited by the people you've had to connect to, whether it's a business angel, a bank manager, a partner, a romantic person, someone in your family, it's possible that you have still gone for some fresh starts and made some significant progress. But I think that progress is going to get better, but particularly I feel from the 1st of May, once Jupiter comes out of its shadow period. So the 1st of May through to the 9th of June, put your foot hard to the floor if you're wanting to be much more goal orientated. Uranus has been pushing you to be much more experimental. Keep that going. But Pluto and of course your ruler Mercury and the Sun, as this event begins, all in your 6th house, is giving you a clue that if you've been quite adhered to a particular way of doing things, you may have to let go a little bit of that metronomic need for order in order to really grasp the opportunity that Jupiter could provide to you. It may mean stepping into some kind of different dimension, a different work environment, just setting yourself a higher bar and not necessarily sticking with what feels comfortable. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. Jupiter has been in your 9th house, which is amazing for travel, higher education, learning a language, a musical instrument. If you're someone who's deeply interested in history or genealogy, all of those things may have really called out to you. It's just that there has been a conflict because since the middle of August last year, Saturn in your 6th house has been reminding you of your responsibilities and obligations. Jupiter in the 9th house is very much more about where we want to be independent and free. We can't do it all, therefore we can't please all of the time, all of the people all of the time. And because you can be quite orientated to what other people's needs are, this in some ways, Saturn, not Jupiter, may have conflicted the amount of space you've had to really go for something that was different and fresh. But if you have travelled more since the end of May last year, or visited places that were very different and enriched your senses, that's probably been lovely. Now through to the 24th of April, Jupiter's going to be in the 2nd decan of Gemini, which is sub-ruled by Venus, your ruler. So that could be a real opportunity to connect with someone who's very, very different to you. Particularly as this event begins, there is those 3 players in Aquarius, the 5th house, which can be fun, can be sociable, but most of all it's about being brave to do something different and be more speculative. So we can't win the proverbial lottery unless we buy the ticket. So if you stay with what you know and what feels comfortable, the kind of Saturnian energy, it could see you missing out on the dynamic celestial window of opportunity through till the 9th of June. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. Scorpio, Jupiter has been in your 8th house, which is very redolent of the vibe of your sign, transformation. Jupiter can be about knowledge, and it can in some ways be about traveling. So if your psychological knowledge has greatly increased, that wouldn't be a surprise. If you've gone somewhere that's very, very different, that also may have been very intriguing to you. If you are someone who's entrepreneurial and enterprising, Jupiter in Gemini could have been fab. It's just that Saturn in the 5th house is very anti-risk. So potentially since the middle of August last year right through to now, even if there's something you feel is really fantastic, if you try to connect to people and show your enthusiasm for that subject or that strand, you may have not necessarily got the responses you really wanted. Take heart, you have got this window of opportunity now through to the 9th of June to try to bring into fruition whatever you set your sights on when Jupiter moved into Gemini at the end of May. The 8th house can also be about intimacy. It can also be about legacies you may have gained from someone's thoughtfulness who has sadly passed on. Or it's possible that a partner has done very well financially, and that's also played into giving your practical financial situation more protection and support. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. Jupiter is your lovely ruler. It's been in your opposite sign. When it moved into Gemini, a real chance to bring a lighter and better vibe to a close relationship by bringing in more harmony, collaboration, cooperation, not sweating the small stuff, understanding that we are different and that's fine. That can be part of you. But I feel that since the middle of August and the clash with Saturn started to shape up, maybe your hopes around relationships have been in some ways inhibited by maybe your practical family circumstances. Maybe you've got young children, and if you'd like to meet someone, it's their care and support is your priority, rightly. It may be that there's older parents that you've had to look out for. Maybe it's your physical circumstances where you live, so you might not live close to where you've connected to someone, and that's been a barrier to that potential relationship. But I think that things can flow easier, and through to the 24th of April, as Jupiter goes through the rest of the second decan of the sign of Gemini, that's sub-ruled by Venus. That gives you an extra opportunity to bring some special connections into your world. They don't have to be romantic. When I do these videos, people often write underneath, I don't want a relationship, I've done all that. And I get that. I really do understand and respect that. But of course, the biggest relationship we have is with ourselves. And because Jupiter is about knowledge, the more we understand our own needs and how we connect to people, even if we don't want to be particularly close, that helps life just to flow along that much easier. But I think if you have had a relationship with someone where emotionally you're just not chiming, that relationship may sadly have come to a close either last summer when the first clash occurred just before Christmas, or even quite recently, or you may still be trying to work something out. Keeping the lines of communication is definitely very important. And indeed, once Jupiter comes out of its post-retrograde shadow, it will see Venus and Neptune in an absolute conjunction on the 1st of May, which can be lovely for your romantic situation. So if you feel that there is some merit in knowing someone, despite things that aren't quite as aligned as you would like, that may be worth persevering around. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Capricorn, Jupiter can be about freedom, but it also can be about feeling free enough to express our point of view. The 6th house can be work. If you work somewhere where it's difficult to say how you feel, since the middle of August last year round to now, that may have felt quite repressive. You may have been considering shifting where you work to somewhere different, and if that's the aim, right through to the 9th of June, there could be a window of opportunity there for you to find that role which gives you personal satisfaction, where you can express yourself. But also, the 6th house can be about things like our physical vitality and health. The more knowledge we download, Jupiter, and inform the decisions we make about what we cook and eat, nutrients, what we drink, the amount of exercise we get. But I feel that there's been a degree of stress, and I think that stress may have been to do with work, and I think it might have at times left you feeling a bit depleted, because Saturn in the 3rd house can affect the nervous system. So if there's been a lot of obligations to others and you've wanted to do your best, you know, if you work in say for example nursing, and it's almost like routinely expected for you to work over the end of your shift because there are people that are poorly and staffing numbers are low, it's very, very difficult in those kind of circumstances to say no. So if your boundaries have been tangled a little bit by wanting to be the best version of yourself, at times that may have then been quite depleting. So this is an opportunity through to the 9th of June, when Jupiter switches into your relating sector, to really think carefully about where you work or some of your ways of living your life, your routines, and seeing if you can make some amendments. 5% over 5 different areas leads to a 25% shift. It's worth thinking about. So if you are someone who's a bit set in your ways, being honest, and Saturn being in the third house could see you defending your point of view on situations, that could be counterintuitive to bring in some fresh ideas into how you lead all the basics of your life. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. Aquarius, Jupiter in the 5th house is fantastic. It's the sector of joy. It can be about children, it can be about social interaction, it can be about showcasing our fantastic talents. It's certainly about charisma, and I think through to the middle of August you may have had quite a time of it, you know, very interactive. But really since the middle of August, when your traditional ruler started to provide a handbrake to the joyfulness that Jupiter can give us in the 5th house. And also the 5th house can be very speculative. It can be about being a bit more risk-taking. Saturn in the 2nd house is asking us to always think about the foundation of our life, not least money, but it can also be about what we're eating and drinking. So you may have found yourself a little bit less outgoing, more inclined to work on the inner part of your world rather than going out and having fun, letting your hair down. So I feel that particularly from the 1st of May, you are going to find yourself feeling a lot more chipper because Venus will return to Aries, connects with Neptune in a delightful manner. And with the post-retrograde shadow coming to an end, and also Jupiter going through the last 10 degrees of the sign of Gemini, that fits in, of course, to your 2 rulers, which are the sub-rulers of Gemini's 3rd decan. So there's a big opportunity for you to really keep trying something that's more enterprising, that showcases your brilliant talents in a dazzling way. If it has felt that you've hit some walls or financial limitations have made things difficult or lots of demands, better days are coming. Do believe it, Aquarius, and go for it, particularly as Mercury in your sign links so fantastically, fabulously well to Jupiter on this event of going direct. Please do check out my new website at patrickarundell.com. There's lots of new offers and ways of working with me. Please see the link below for more. So Pisces, Jupiter is your traditional ruler, Saturn is your resident at the moment. So since the 7th of May 2023, you've probably had to strip your life back in some ways, make some sacrifices, and you've had the electric energies of Uranus perhaps at times creating excitement and lots of stimulation, but maybe some stress. And because Jupiter's the 4th house, if you've done something with a property, you've bought one, rented one, renovated one, done something with the money around your family unit in an imaginative way, you've started a home-based business, you're working Jupiter fantastically well. But I don't think it's been easy. I feel that particularly since the middle of August last year, that Saturn application to Jupiter has made you feel quite cramped and you like to feel flowy. Now the great thing with this event is the role of Neptune and the North Node in your sign, so they're giving you a chance. You also have Venus in your 2nd house, that's great for money. So if you're wanting to do something about moving, improving, renovating, and it has been elusive until now, things can start to evolve in a more productive way. But if you're also wanting to bring some joy into your life, the addition of someone to your family, or move closer to people that you feel comfortable with, or spend time in an environment which is very pleasing to your senses, Jupiter in the 4th house could see you traveling to somewhere that's very, very, very quiet, very spiritual, just where you feel really at home. Once you can get beyond Saturn's grip, that will make things a lot easier for you. It's been a real pleasure sharing Jupiter going direct with you. If you've yet to watch your February deep dive for each of the 12 zodiac signs, please see the link below. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com, and remember, my new service of video astrology readings is very affordable. I feel it's already proved popular. Please check that out, and you can have the year ahead, 2 questions answered, or I can look at your solar return, or you can still have a one-to-one with me too, or take advantage of my special chart offer of 50% off through to the end of February. Please see the link below for more.